this was definitely where she wanted to be. In 2002, she married a nursing student in Scottsdale, Arizona, but this was like a very quick marriage, and they divorced. So Rebecca is really enjoying her career in ophthalmology. She was working at the Horizon Eye Institute in Phoenix. Not only was she passionate about her career, but she made really good money. She was able to cover her living expenses, and she also made enough extra that she could send a $400 check back to her family in Missouri every month. So she was also kind of helping to support them. One day she's at work and this guy comes in to get his eyes checked, and his name is Jonah Shacknai. Jonah is extremely wealthy. He was a self-made billionaire. He was actually the founder of a pharmaceutical cosmetic company. So Jonah and Rebecca hit it off right away, like from the minute they meet. A few minutes after meeting Rebecca, he asks her out to dinner. So the two begin dating really right away, and even though there is a 20-year age difference, the two seem very happy. They're both like a little bit of like health nuts. They're really into eating healthy and working out, and they were both extremely family oriented. Jonah's company was based out of Phoenix, which was where he lived, but he also has a summer house in Coronado, California. This house is called the Spreckles Mansion, and it is a 27-room mansion right up along the beach. So Rebecca meets Jonah, and they're dating basically from that first day that they meet. And 3 months later, they had become very serious with each other. Now Jonah has 2 teenagers from his first marriage, and he also has a little boy named Max who was 6 years old from his second marriage. So there's kind of a lot of players in this case, but Jonah's second wife is named Dina, and Max was the little boy's name. The divorce between Dina and Jonah had been pretty bitter initially, but they'd kind of worked together over the years to be able to co-parent Max. And in fact, Jonah even bought Dina her own house in Coronado so they could all vacation as a family in the summer. Dina also has a twin sister named Nina, who we'll talk about a little later. So Rebecca ends up moving in with Jonah, and Rebecca and Max have a really good bond. Right away, they really take to each other. Rebecca takes on the role as stepmother. She's making dinner, she's taking Max to soccer. And this wasn't something that Dina loved. Her ex-husband has moved in his younger girlfriend, who is now really close with her son. She didn't like it. I don't think she really liked Rebecca at all. Plus, Jonah had moved on. I believe he started dating Rebecca like a couple of months after their divorce was final, so that kind of stings to an ex-wife. summer was approaching, Jonah asked Rebecca to quit her job and come summer with them in the mansion in Coronado. Now remember, Rebecca is not only making money to support herself, she is supporting her family as well. She's a little hesitant to quit her job and just live off her boyfriend. But he is like, look, if you're worried about the money to your family, I'll pay them to, I'll send a monthly check. He just really wants her to come with them for the summer. So she quits her job and agrees to go, and they all head to California. And other than Dina really not liking Rebecca, things are going pretty well. Until July 11th, 2011. Now, this day would start off like any other. Jonah woke up and went to the gym to work out, and Rebecca was home with her younger sister who was there visiting, and her younger sister's named Zena. And then Rebecca was also watching Max. So the two sisters are both home, but they're in different parts of the house. Rebecca is in a downstairs half bathroom, and Zena is upstairs getting ready for the morning. Rebecca is in this downstairs bathroom when she hears a horrible noise, and she comes running out into the foyer, and she sees Max laying on the floor. All around Max was the shattered chandelier that had been hanging above the foyer. His razor scooter was also next to him. Rebecca didn't see what had happened, but it seemed like he had fallen over the second story balcony and fallen into the foyer, or maybe he had fallen down the stairs. Rebecca has medical training, so she begins CPR right away, and she's screaming for Zena to call 911. So Zena calls 911 and tells dispatch that Max isn't breathing. Once the paramedics arrive, Rebecca calls Jonah to tell him about Max's accident, and he rushes home, and he actually gets home as they are loading Max into the ambulance. They are on their way to the children's hospital as police arrive on scene. Now, because of the severity of the accident, and because it involved such a young child, the Coronado Police Department launched an investigation into the accident. Police want to get a statement from Rebecca right away, but she is really kind of in shock. She tells them she was in the downstairs bathroom. She heard a noise and came out and found Max. So this was the basics of what had happened, but police did notice she wasn't telling them any details. She did tell police that while she was administering CPR to Max, he kind of was able to mutter one word, and what he said was Ocean. Now, Ocean is Max's dog's name. So, police immediately began working the scene. It appears that Max was riding his scooter on the second story landing, and he had fallen down into the foyer, bringing the chandelier down with him. So Dina, Max's mother, gets a text nothing could have prepared her for what she saw when she got to the hospital. Little Max is laying in a hospital bed. He is hooked up to machines. He's on a ventilator. He has been placed in a medically induced coma. He had severe injuries to his head, neck, and back. And they were told that if he did somehow pull through this, which he's in bad shape, but there is hope, and if he does, there will definitely be some residual complications. Like, this is not an accident where he's going to come out the same kid who went into this coma. Now, Jonah and Dina are divorced, but they do share like 50-50 custody of Max, and neither one leaves his side the entire time that he is in the hospital. Dina is, of course, very upset. She is firing questions at Jonah, asking how this happened. And when she finds out he wasn't even home when the accident happened, that Rebecca was in charge, she kind of flips a lid. And Rebecca knew Dina would be upset. In fact, Rebecca told her family Dina was going to kill her. After all, she was the one in charge of Max when he had this accident. So the same evening that Max had gotten into the accident, Rebecca is talking on the phone with her sister Mary. And Mary said that she kept repeating over and over, Dina is going to kill me. She's going to kill me. But Mary is trying to, talk her sister down. She's obviously very upset. But she's reminding her that this was an accident. Just take a deep breath. But Rebecca was extremely upset. Back at the hospital, Dina is trying to figure out why, if Rebecca had been watching him, she was allowing him to play on that second story landing with his Razor scooter. And basically, she's blaming one person for the accident, and that is Rebecca. Jonah, however, is sticking up for Rebecca. He's saying, look, she did CPR on him until paramedics got there. If it weren't for her, he could be dead already. Basically, he's trying to say that she may have saved Max's life. The day after Max's accident, Rebecca goes to the airport to drop off her sister Zena, and she picks up Adam, Jonah's brother. He is coming into town just to help support the family and be there in whatever way he can. Adam was a tugboat captain from Memphis, Tennessee. After Rebecca picks Adam up from the airport, the two go to the hospital to see Max, and then they go back to the mansion. This has obviously been like a horrific 24 hours for everyone involved. Adam is exhausted. He's been traveling all day. Rebecca is very emotional. She also wants to go to bed. So Adam was staying in the guest house. So he goes out to the guest house and goes to bed. And Jonah is just living at the hospital. He is staying there until Max stabilizes, so it's just Rebecca and Adam at home. But something was about to happen that would make an already bad situation even worse. is in the mansion alone that night. She talks to her older sister Mary on the telephone. At 10:48 p.m., Rebecca receives a text message from Nina. And Nina is Dina's twin sister. And this text says she wants to come over to the house to discuss Max's accident with Rebecca. Rebecca does not respond to this text message. Then at 12:50 a.m., Rebecca accesses her voicemail and she listens to a message. By the time police were able to get the records, this voicemail had been deleted. So no one knows exactly what was said, but we do know this voicemail came from Jonah, and he said he was calling just to give Rebecca an update. Basically, things were not improving with Max, and it didn't look good. It didn't look like he was going to survive. At 6:30 a.m. on July 13th, Adam comes out of the guest house and finds Rebecca hanging from the balcony. He immediately calls 911, and in the 911 recording, he says, quote, "I've got a girl, hung herself. It's on Ocean Boulevard, across from the hotel, the same place that you came and got the kid yesterday." End quote. When dispatch asks if she's still alive, he says, "I don't know." Then there's like some muffled talking, and you can hear him say, "Are you still alive?" And he gets back on the phone and says he's doing compressions. Coronado police respond, and Adam, so he meets them at the front door, brings them in through the house into the back, where Rebecca is now laying on the ground. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Jonah is still at the hospital when he gets a text message from his brother telling him to call him. And then he does, and this is when Jonah finds out that his girlfriend has ended her life. Jonah hasn't left Max's side since the accident, and now he's finding out his girlfriend is dead. But did Rebecca really choose to end her life? Because as all the information would start coming out, this was definitely not a cut and dried case. According to Dina, she was sitting in the hospital with Jonah when he gets the call about Rebecca. And he gets off the phone and he is telling Dina that Rebecca died. And she's like, what happened? And according to Dina, he made this motion like he was plunging a knife into his stomach, like kind of like this. And then he said to her, "Asian honor." He would later explain this, saying he thought that Rebecca felt so guilty about Max's accident that she had chosen to end her life. So now we're going to talk about when Rebecca was found, because there is a lot of weird things here. When she was found, she was completely nude, hanging from the balcony. Her feet and wrists were heavily bound with red rope. Her wrists had been tied behind her back. this is where she had gotten the rope. When they go up to the guest bedroom that was like attached to the balcony, they found that the red rope was tied to a bedpost, and then it was like leading out through the balcony and over the balcony. There were also 2 knives in the bedroom. One was a steak knife with traces of blood on it, and one was a chef's knife. There were also a few drops of blood on the carpet. On the balcony, there were footprints, and there was also a single boot print that they determined was of, like, belonging to a male. While police were searching the home, they found this book of witchcraft, and one of the pages there was an instruction manual on some sort of like ritual with witchcraft, and in it there's like a drawing of a woman with her hands bound behind her back with red rope. So they were thinking maybe Rebecca had used this as like a guide, but they did rule out that this was some sort of like ritual that had gone wrong. Strangest of all, on the back of the bedroom door, in black paint, was written, quote, "She saved him. Can you save her?" End quote. To this day, no one can make sense of this message. It was like a riddle. One neighbor would come forward to police and tell them that she had heard screaming coming from the home or the direction of the home the night before. Now, police immediately kind of zero in on Adam because he was the only other person in the home when Rebecca died. Adam is questioned by police, and he tells them that he, slept all night, woke up that morning, got dressed, and was making his way into the house to get some coffee when he found Rebecca. He then ran into the house, got a knife and like a stool, and cut her down, and then began CPR. Adam was extremely cooperative with police. He even agreed to take a polygraph that same day that this all happened, which he was very emotional. Like, not only is his nephew on life support, but now he has just found the body of his brother's girlfriend. So I'm thinking the timing of the polygraph had a lot to do with the results, which were inconclusive. They basically said they couldn't tell if he was lying or being truthful, but police have no evidence that proves Adam was responsible. They have nothing to hold him on, so they let him go. In the meantime, Rebecca's family, who has already been told about her passing, turns on the TV, and they are watching a news story about Rebecca, and this is when they learn that she had been found nude. See, the police had left Rebecca's body laying outside for hours while they processed everything. They hadn't even covered her body, and there were several news helicopters who were like circling above, so there was actual footage of this crime scene being shown to the public. Now, I'm sure that they, were blurring out her body, but still, this is a pretty horrific thing for Rebecca's family to see. Looking at this news footage and just hearing what they're saying, Rebecca's family feels like there is no way that she would have chosen to end her life like this. Rebecca's sister Mary told NBC News, quote, Rebecca was full of life, vibrant, and fun-loving. Hopefully justice will be done for her. And she told, anyone who would listen that her sister had been killed. There was no way that she had been responsible for her own death. Police are busy looking for other possible suspects, so they keep looking, and the next person they're interested in is Dina, Max's mother. Dina had never liked Rebecca, and I'm sure these feelings were intensified when she finds out Rebecca was the one who was supposed to be looking after Max, who is now in a hospital room fighting for his life. So police think if foul play was involved, Dina definitely had motive. I guess there was also an eyewitness who came forward who said that there was a woman who matched Dina's description who walked up to the front door of the house on the night that Rebecca died. However, remember, Dina had a twin sister, Nina, so it could have really been either one of them. There is also this text message from Nina telling Rebecca she wants to come over to talk to her. On July 16th, just days after Rebecca's death, Max is declared brain dead and he ends up passing away. So there is a lot of really heavy stuff going on in this family. Police really have no evidence that Rebecca was murdered, although the circumstances surrounding her death are extremely suspicious. At this point, they said, we don't have any persons of interest, but we also have not ruled anyone out. Jonah's company sees this huge stock plummet, and Jonah kind of freaks out. He hires a PR firm, a lawyer, and armed guards to follow him around everywhere, and then he really does his best to stay out of the limelight. Police are able to get access to all of Rebecca's text messages, everything on her phone for the year previous to her death. And they would say that what they learned was that she wasn't in the best state of mind in that last year of her life. She would write things like, I feel this incredible emptiness. I'm not thinking, I'm crying. And she even wrote that no amount of money is worth what I'm going through. From the outside, Rebecca looks like this bubbly, outgoing, happy woman, but police are kind of seeing a different side of Rebecca. She would talk about how she really had nothing but Jonah. She had no career. She didn't even have her own money. She was totally reliant on her boyfriend, and yet she was frustrated that after giving up everything for him, he had not popped the question. 7 weeks after Rebecca's death, on September 2nd, a police conference was held, and they basically announced that they have found that neither Max or Rebecca's deaths were homicide. They said Max had basically just been killed in a tragic freak accident. Police believed that he had been on the second-story landing and he had been riding his scooter. Maybe, he was tripped up by the dog or something. But but somehow he went over the railing, grabbed onto the chandelier, and it came down with him. Max had suffered a spinal cord injury that had stopped his heart and lungs, and this had resulted in severe brain damage. So basically, police are saying this was 100% just a tragedy, but it was an accident. They also rule Rebecca's death as a suicide. In the autopsy, they said that all the evidence was conclusive with a hanging. The only DNA that they could find on the ropes that were used to bind Rebecca was her own DNA. They also said that on the door leading out to the balcony where she was hung, the only fingerprints that were covered were Rebecca's. There were no signs of a struggle in the home, no signs of forced entry. Basically, there was nothing to suggest that someone else had come into the home and killed her. They also believe that the reason she had chosen to end her life was she just felt awful about Max's accident. So during this press conference, police address a couple of things. One of them is the boot print that was found out on the balcony. They said that it was one of the first responders who wasn't wearing booties and who had gone out on the balcony. And basically this was like a crime scene contamination, and they did not believe that someone wearing boots was ever out there. So both cases were officially closed, but neither family really accepted the conclusions. And honestly, I kind of agree here. Rebecca being bound with her hands behind her body is super suspicious. She was very tightly bound, feet were bound, her hands were bound, she had a gag. But I guess police knew that there would be a lot of questions about this, and they made this demo video where they had someone who worked for the police department who was about Rebecca's size and stature show how you can bind your hands in front of you and then slip one out and put them behind you and tighten them. Basically the video proved, and they released it to the public so you could see how it could be done. Another thing that a lot of people can't get over is the t-shirt that she gagged herself with. It just seems incredibly odd that she would go through so much trouble to gag herself and bind herself and then just hang herself, and to do it in the nude. A lot of women, even if they are choosing to end their own lives, they're still concerned with how they will be found. And to do that all while she wasn't dressed, it just was so weird. People just couldn't let this go. Rebecca's friends and family members did not believe for 1 second that she had chosen to end her life this way. Yes, they said Rebecca was going through a dark time with Max's accident, but it just made no sense to them. Police would say that they believed the straw that broke the camel's back with Rebecca was this voicemail from Jonah saying, Max isn't gonna make it, and she was just so overcome with guilt that, she made this decision. Rebecca's family would end up hiring a lawyer. They also went on the Dr. Phil show, and this is when this case becomes just even more insane. Dina also goes on the Dr. Phil this expert. It was a forensic medical examiner, and she had hired this person to look into Max's death. The medical examiner discovers something in the pictures that were taken of Spreckles' mansion. She notices that the carpeting on the second story of the mansion was like a very, very thick carpet, which in her opinion would not have allowed Max to reach such a high speed that he would have toppled over the banister. The other thing she notes was that it would have been basically impossible for Max to fall over the banister because he was not tall enough. His center of gravity was too low. He was just too short. As she reviews the autopsy report, she finds even more things that she is concerned about. One thing that stood out to her was that Max had injuries around multiple parts of his body. So let's say you fall down, you fall on your side, you would expect the injuries to mostly be on this side if that was where you landed. But Max had injuries all over his body, and this, she says, points to like some other event. Something else happened, not just a fall. The last thing that this forensic examiner notices has to do with Rebecca's account of what happened that morning. Now, Rebecca had told police that Max had said the word ocean while she was administering CPR to him. However, the ME said that due to the extent of injuries to Max's cervical cord, he would have not been able to say any words at all. In fact, she said he wouldn't have even been able to make any noises. It was her opinion that Max had been murdered. Now, she even comes up with a possible scenario where, Max is riding his scooter and Rebecca picks him up. She's, trying to discipline him, and he kind of wiggles away from her and goes over the balcony, maybe, unintentionally, and then he dies. The expert said this would give Rebecca, because she had a hand in Max's death, even if it was just an accident, this was why she felt guilty enough to end her own life. So now there's all of these accusations that Max's death was not actually an accident. And if anyone, Nina, Dina, Jonah, had believed that it had not been an accident, this basically gives everybody a whole lot of motive to want Rebecca Zahau dead. Rebecca's family had her body exhumed so that they could have a second autopsy done. So during this autopsy, this other ME notices the 4 marks on Rebecca's head, and these marks had been found during the first autopsy, so it wasn't like they had been missed, but these head wounds were basically explained away in the first autopsy as, when she had thrown herself over the balcony, she had hit her head 4 times, so she had these 4 cuts on her head. But the family believes that Rebecca was actually knocked out. Somebody hit her over the head 4 times until she was unconscious, and they believe this is why there were no signs of a struggle or defensive wounds, because she had been completely unconscious. So their medical examiner agrees that she was likely struck over the head with something, And so Rebecca's family takes these findings to the DA and asks them to reopen her case, but this request is denied. Rebecca's family then decides to file a wrongful death suit, like in civil court. And in this suit, they say that Nina, Dina, and Jonah, as well as Adam, all conspired to kill Rebecca. So, what Rebecca's family basically thinks happened is that Nina or Dina showed up that night and knocked on the front door, which would explain this neighbor seeing someone who looked like Dina in the vicinity. And then when Rebecca opened the door, they struck her on the head 4 times until she was unconscious on the floor. And then they are saying that they got Adam to carry her up the stairs and help stage this suicide. There was security footage, I guess, that showed Tina at the hospital with Max, and police never said what Nina's alibi was, but after this lawsuit was filed, the family actually ended up revising it and just naming Adam as like the person who was responsible for Rebecca's death. And they kind of stick to the same story, but this time they say Adam was behind the entire thing. He hit her over the head and staged her death. You know, just because she was responsible for Max's accident. Even though Adam had been staying at the house, he was in the guest house, remember? There was absolutely no physical evidence putting him inside the house. None of his fingerprints were found in the house. No hair, nothing. So Rebecca's family attorney points to this and says, look, he was a guest at the house. He walked through the house when he let police in. How is there no trace of him ever being in the house? He had to have wiped away all of his fingerprints. But this doesn't make a lot of sense because Rebecca's fingerprints were still found everywhere. Had no fingerprints been found in the house, then I would kind of see where they're going with this, but it would be impossible for Adam to have wiped his fingerprints off the doors and stuff, but kept Rebecca's fingerprints. So, I do not think this could have happened. Now, I do think that if someone was wearing gloves, that could explain it. But Adam wiping off his fingerprints, that doesn't make any sense. So one of the really weird things, and something that no one can really explain in this case, is the painted writing on the wall. Now, I guess there was an analysis of this done, and they said they compared Rebecca's handwriting to the painting on the wall and then Adam's, and it did look more similar to Adam's. But even the police came out and said, like, look, the reason we didn't do an analysis on this is because you cannot compare painted handwriting on a wall with a paintbrush to somebody's, like, writing on a piece of paper. Those are 2 totally different things. But the family was trying to say that Adam had written this on the wall to make it look like a suicide. Now, in my opinion, if Adam was trying to make it look like a suicide, if anyone was, they would have written something more like a goodbye note instead of like a riddle. Honestly, if somebody was staging this and there was foul play involved, them binding her hands and feet was really stupid because that was what made police think foul play was involved in the first place. make sense that they would try to stage it like she had taken her own life, but then also, like, leave all these really weird things behind, like a note, like making it look like she couldn't have done it because her body was bound up. But because I do think it was because of the binding, because Adam was the only one there, the jury just could not wrap their heads around the fact that Rebecca had done this to herself. And they did find Adam guilty. They basically said he was responsible for Rebecca's death, and he was ordered to pay $5 million to Rebecca's family. This case, I don't know if we will ever get like a good answer. I have gone back and forth this entire last week while researching it because I would find something that really made me believe she had not done it, and then I would find something that really suggested that she had. So let's go over a little bit of the evidence. One of the reasons why I think she did not do it, or one of the things that makes me very suspicious, is that she was found completely naked. I don't know why, but that really, like, that fact really has always bothered me because I don't think, she was very close with her family. I don't think she would have wanted to be found that way, although I obviously don't know her at all, and these are just my opinions. Also, she bound her feet. This is what police are saying. Then bound her hands, bound her feet, put a gag in her mouth, bound her hands, and flipped herself over the balcony. Why go to that extent? Like, if you're hanging yourself, you don't need your feet bound. Like, why do you need a gag? It just doesn't make any kind of sense to me. Plus, this whole, like, painting that they found on the back of the door. I have no idea what that means. I've been thinking about it all week. Nothing makes sense to me. Like, why leave this, like, nonsensical riddle behind? I do think Rebecca obviously felt very guilty. I have had, my own kids who have, obviously not accidents to this severity, but, one time my daughter fell and cracked her head open and had to get stitches right here. And I remember feeling so guilty, even though she just tripped, like there was nothing I could have done. You feel guilty when someone gets hurt who you are responsible for. I do wonder if something else happened, because here's the thing, Rebecca telling police that Max had muttered the word ocean makes me think that she was not telling the truth about exactly what had happened, and I do think maybe she was trying to make it look like maybe the dog had tripped Max up or something. They have said that there was no way, his lungs, his heart, everything was stopped, so he wouldn't have said anything to her. That makes me think there is more to this story than we will ever know, that something else happened, and I'm not saying Rebecca was responsible for Max's accident, but I think she was leaving some details out about that and then kind of trying to cover it up and kind of lead police to the realization that the dog was involved. We do know that Rebecca, she was kind of in a weird place. She had nothing. She had no career. She had no job. I do think that, had her and Jonah split up over this, which I 100% think would have happened no matter what. She was certified. She could have gone back to her career, but in that moment, she's sitting in California across resident. She has nothing, no income, and so I could understand why she would be freaking out. I have not read anything that suggests that Jonah ever blamed her, at least initially, while she was alive. I haven't been able to find anything where he, yelled at her or told her it was all her fault. Although we will never know what was on that voicemail that she listened to shortly before she died. He could have been totally unloading on her and saying, "This is your fault, my son's gonna die," and that pushed her over the edge, but of course we will never know. So this is the mystery of Rebecca Zahau's dailies. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you think one way or the other, if you're like me and you're just kind of back and forth about it. It's a pretty intense tragedy all around. I want to quickly cite my sources. I got information from an ID Mystery Murder, Season 1, Episode 1, titled Rebecca Zahau. I got information from Wikipedia, a kpbs.com article titled Rebecca Zahau Family Sues the Sheriff's Department by Alexander Nijin. I also found an article on CBS8.com titled Rebecca Zahau